Oh, it's a
Still a
long
little
one.
late over
I feel like my hair grew during that show. Like,
there.
whew, brutal.
I
These England games,
yeah.
England, Germany, wherever. I don't care. You make me be on air for 3 straight games. Two's long enough. I mean,
Yeah. And
I'm not
those
gonna
last
make it to the
games,
night game.
I felt like I was falling asleep over there. There was not much competitiveness. You know, backups were playing at the end of the games. It was we saw a
I
Trey
would have.
Lance
I know.
sighting.
I would have fallen asleep if the sun wasn't just blinding me.
I
It's
couldn't
just
believe it.
hard to sleep when you got a game in Dallas.
I don't understand why it's like that. Like has that happened in the past? Not as obviously blatant as that, but I mean, don't shouldn't they have like a curtain there or some sort or like something to block it? I don't know.
Yeah, Jerry and his fancy glass, like you could tint
Sure.
it. That's, an easy fix. You can just tint the glass. I mean, even just a little bit of a tint. You don't need to go limo tint on that.
No.
Just enough, just enough to block it so it's not just blinding. I remember this same kind of thing last year around this time of year because it's not too bad until daylight savings hits, and then
I was
it's
gonna
like,
say
bam, right there.
that
And
was
Jerry assumed they'd be playing a lot more night games, but not these days.
yeah. It really looked like at first you're like, why didn't CeeDee Lamb even try to catch that? Because the angle was on the side at broadcast, and then you show and it's just right in his eyes. Like, dude had no idea the ball came to him. And honestly, what a pivotal moment too. That was they could have scored. They would have been, within possession, and then they just get blown out from there. Cooper Rush could not recover from that afterwards. So he's like, man,
Yeah,
people didn't even want to try to catch my ball. Why would I?
I think it would have probably been a blowout either way. It
Yeah,
just
that's
looked
fair.
a lot better, at least through halftime. And,
Yeah,
they can't wear the visors unless they have a prescription for them, but it'd be
crazy.
pretty nice if they made an exception for
Well,
games in that stadium where, like, see these guys wear, like, some sunglasses underneath, like a
yeah.
baseball player out there, the flip up shades and flip them
Yeah,
down
that'd be
when they hit
nice.
that side of the ball. But,
I'll tell you this: my Madden players always have visors, and they could be playing in a dome, but it just looks cool anyway. So
right? I don't know why they don't let them. They need to bring back the visors. It's a cool look. Makes them
yeah,
look
I think
more
Peyton Manning
intimidating.
had a visor, like clear one at times. I don't know, which if he could get it, I feel like anyone could get it. Yeah, it was kind of a brutal slate of games we watched. I mean, there's some offense, but it was really sluggish. We saw some horrendous offense today, so a really big regression of what we've seen in the last couple of weeks. It was like ramping up, and now we kind of saw a little bit of a step back. Like even the first game, Carolina looked incredible for the first half, and then like you know what, we're not used to this whole winning thing, and then the Giants came roaring back, and then the Giants looked terrible in the first half. So it was really heckle and giant kind of situation for a lot of teams. It felt like they played well in one half, played terrible in the other half. It just didn't feel like a really smooth uh, NFL Sunday.
Bunch of jive turkey games out there. They're just not what you're looking for. I mean, that Germany game ends up being one of the best of
I
the day.
know
I mean, just
Panthers, Giants. You kidding
out,
me?
but when you have the same record, I guess you should match up well.
Yes.
The Broncos and KC ended up being a pretty good
That's
matchup. I
no.
think KC is kind of doing themselves in by going for this undefeated season. I think they would have been better off losing that game.
Yeah.
Like the further they go undefeated, the more effort and drive they put into the regular season, and it's going to come back to bite them. I mean, these games that they're winning close right now, I feel like they're playing with fire. You win all of them in the regular season, you're going to lose one in the postseason.
Yeah.
It's really hard. It's like in baseball, if you're undefeated in one-run games for the first half of the season, you're probably going to lose the majority of them in the second half of the season.
Right.
It balances out in the end, and so these one-score games they keep getting, somewhat lucky, somewhat, every break. There's the one play that you need, like who blocks a 35-yard field goal in today's NFL, and they had like four guys ready to block it. It was like
Even the rest were
script
trying to
was
block it.
in, or it was just like the maybe it's one of those where you just don't think they're even going to try to rush because that's what they normally do, and then all of a sudden they've got this play for when the field goal really matters. They've got
Right.
different plays that they're going to bring out on the block. So you know, that wasn't a game we expected to be close. It was a little bit better, but still, Kansas City just struggling to score points.
Right.
Denver has a good D, but just not the matchup you'd really hope for. I mean, it's just not
it's the same defense that gave up like 1,000,000 points to Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. It will be interesting. I'm curious how the Chiefs will match up against Baltimore because the Chiefs defense is still really good. But you're right. If you cannot go punch for punch with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, you're not going to win the AFC at this point right now. If you were to give me the matchup, even Pittsburgh's offense looks like it's flying right now, and they've got a great defense. So there's some teams that KC will have trouble with matching up with if they cannot consistently move the ball.
If somehow the Bengals are able to sneak in, I think that'd be a horrible matchup for KC. I mean,
they always are
defense, but they can put up points on anybody, and so I mean, I think there's a lot of just tough matchups in the AFC. I don't think they're going to just skate through. They really need that bye, which right now they look like they've got a good shot at locking up, but I could see them kind of collapsing over this last month, losing 3-4 games and ending up as the 2 or the 3 seed and kind of getting themselves into some trouble. And even the Chargers only have 2 losses, so it was the Chargers that knocked them off a couple of times. They lose some division games. You never know. I mean, it seems like they're far and away, but just because they're undefeated right now doesn't mean they're going to go into the postseason that way.
Do you think there was has there been an uglier game than a Minnesota Vikings 12-7 win over Jacksonville Jaguars with a backup quarterback? Have you seen an uglier game?
Yeah, it looked like they beat Penn State. I could not stop thinking that they were playing Penn State every single time. Those white helmets the Jaguars are wearing, it just like, what is Penn State doing out there on a Sunday? It doesn't make any sense. And I don't know. Penn State might have been able to put up a better fight. I mean, realistically, probably not, but that was about as bad as it looked from the Jaguars. I mean, they could have won that game if they had just about anything going. I mean, Darnold looked horrible.
3 picks by Darnold, no touchdowns. 2 picks by Mac Jones, no touchdowns. The only touchdown in that game was an early first quarter QB sneak for the one that went to Mac Jones. Not even a running back. Like, it doesn't help anyone. And so it was just a hilarious game to watch.
Ugly. I mean, I don't even want to see that game on any sort of replay anywhere. I mean, hopefully for Mac Jones, it's just a tough D that he faced and he'll look a little better, but he didn't find Brian Thomas till the end of the game.
Yeah,
I think Bigsby got hurt and they didn't even use ETN, which is like, you thought this guy was a stud at the beginning of the year. Why not at least try to use him?
Yeah. So were there any like studs at all out there? I'm just kidding. There were studs out there.
Only on Thursday. They all played on Thursday. We didn't talk enough
about everyone from Thursday Night Football, and that could just fill our sheet up.
Just list them all: Lamar, Burrow, not Zay Flowers, but the rest of the Ravens pass catchers had some.
It's crazy.
The brand new wide receiver onto the screen goes for 3 and 100, and it was just one of those weird days.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't think you could get a better game than that Thursday night.
That was great. It was a lot of drama, a lot of offense, some really key plays. But, I mean, everyone's talking about him. Well, Lamar is probably going to win his 3rd MVP, and we'll see if he can make it to the Super Bowl. That's kind of his very, very clear missing resume item. But Ja'Marr Chase, man, that dude plays like he's 6'4", 240 pounds, and he just has this presence on the field where once he gets the ball, good luck. He's like seriously a mix of like a DK Metcalf and a Tyreek Hill. And it makes no sense how he's able to bust through a line like that while catching it in the middle of the field and running past 8 guys. I just haven't seen anything like that since Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, I mean, he reminds me mostly of Tyreek Hill. I don't think he's going to fool anybody into being a 6-footer. He's not a 6-footer.
But he plays so big. That's the difference.
He can jump. I don't think he necessarily plays big. Yeah. He's not running people over. He's not stiff-arming guys. He's using his agility to move through. But, yeah, I mean, he climbed the ladder for one of those touchdowns, gets up, and isn't afraid to come down. I think that's one thing he's gotten hurt in the past from climbing the ladder and then just getting lit up by a safety. So got to be a little bit careful of that. But 11 for 264 and 3, I mean, the absolute stud of the week. very, very challenging to lose your matchup if you had Jamar Chase. I mean, you really had to surround him with just bums this week to
Which there
lose.
were a lot of, to be fair.
I lost a matchup against Jamar Chase, and I'm not mad at all. It's one of those things like, when he does that, it's
you just take the week off. Don't even worry about it. You're just like, you know what? I'll come back next week and set my lineup.
Yeah, no, I mean he was great. The game in general, a lot of big scores. Burrow and Lamar both top 5 quarterbacks for the week, but the rest of the quarterbacks didn't really ball out this weekend, and that really hurt a lot of the fantasy production. There's a lot of middling performances, but I mean for the most part, it was tough out there for a lot of teams. But Arizona Cardinals turned it around, looked really good.
Yeah.
James Conner had a big week. He had only 33 rushing yards, but adds a TD and then 5 for 80 receiving. I mean, that'll do it for you. Those are the type of running backs you really like to have as an RB2, maybe even a low end RB1 if you went 0 RB. Yeah. Wait on it. I mean, he's been producing all year and he's stayed healthy. So
yeah, that's a big thing for him. Even Trey Benson got a little bit of usage at the end of the game because it was such a blowout, which is, we'll see what his role is moving forward because they need to keep James Conner healthy. But the Arizona Cardinals have a good offense. It just runs through Kyler and James Conner, and if they can get things going, and if James Conner is adding these type of receiving yards, that's a huge boost for someone who usually isn't catching much out of the backfield. If you have James Conner, this is a huge sign. This immediately, if this is consistent, I'm not saying he's going to get 80 yards, but if he gets 3-4 catches a game and it ramps up the production from the backfield, that's easily an extra 3 to 5 points a game if he is productive in those catching situations. So James Conner, man, he's been an unsung hero this year. I think he's had like a couple of bad games, but outside of that, man, if he's your RB2, you're pretty happy with how he's been producing this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of RB2s that have not been showing out like that at all, or have disappeared from that RB2 radar. And out of nowhere, Austin Eckler back to RB2. I mean, I guess it makes sense. Brian Robinson's out. Why wouldn't Austin Eckler score 2 TDs?
I was so annoyed watching that game. If you're a Jane Daniels owner, you are frustrated.
Yeah, a little frustrated in that whole thing. Ended up losing by 6 points with a good team. But
like poaching 1-yard touchdowns in 2024. What is this? I get it. You don't want to get Jane Daniels hurt, and that's the case. But it felt like every time that Jane Daniels was going to get some points, they fell at the one on purpose. And they're like, all right, Austin, here you go. Or even their backup got a touchdown on the 1-yard line. So
McNichols ran one in.
I
had Austin
triple backup
against my team that had Daniels. So double whammy there on that one.
Yeah.
Looked like at that point that it wasn't going to kill me, and then end of the day it probably will. So we'll see.
Do you think this? I know Austin Eckler is not the Austin Eckler of old, but do you see production, like consistent production, to maybe be like a low end flex potentially, or is he, if Brian Robinson is out, that's the only time you'll play him?
I think if Robinson's out, you definitely probably play him. At this point, he looks like more of an RB2 when he's out, and the offense is so good. I think he's a low end flex, even with Robinson in. The problem is they haven't really given them truly defined roles.
Right.
Like we just saw that like Brian Robinson was the first and second down back, and Eckler had third downs like you would assume. And Eckler was getting 6-7 targets a game. I'd say great, like roll with him. Like if Austin Eckler had caught those touchdowns, would have had no issues with that. I mean, I think he's one of the best red zone receiving backs. Like he's really good at getting outside, finding corners, banging through a couple of guys and making it count. So I think there is upside to him. I think they're kind of trying to keep him fresh and healthy as best they can, because it looks like they're a playoff team right now. I mean, they didn't quite pull it off versus the Steelers, but they were right there, right next to them. Could have won that game, probably should have won that game, but hard to win when they're still trying to define some different roles. Sure. And one thing I'd like to see them do too is switch from Zach Ertz to Ben Sinnott. I don't know what is really holding him back, but Ertz doesn't have the speed to get anything extra for you. I mean, that last play, you have another tight end in there. He probably gains 12, 13 yards on that play, just that little bit extra burst and speed. Ertz, solid number 2 tight end. I mean, you just need a guy to catch a 4-yard pass for a first down. Great. But, it'd be nice to see a little more juice, especially getting close to the playoffs. Like, you're going to need that to make it through in the playoffs.
Yeah, and Jaden Daniels, you just need – I mean, they're in a win-now situation after getting Marshawn Lattimore. Obviously, it's not all right, we're going to rebuild this thing. They're trying to win this thing. So, yeah, you're right. You got to surround Jaden Daniels with confidence and with players that can make huge plays, because I think that's one of the things that at times the Commanders lacked were big plays. I mean, and look, it is the Steelers' defense, and they're pretty stiff, but you still need to find players that at any time can make a big play. And Zach Ertz, to your point, is not breaking out for a 20-plus yard touchdown at any time soon, or we're way past that window.
I don't even know if he can run a 20-plus yard route.
It's fair.
let alone catch it. Like, it's like, all right, eight and turn. It's just all very limited, and it'd be nice to see another guy out there, because we really haven't seen a number 2 wide receiver emerge. Noah Brown has kind of taken that role, but hasn't exactly ran with it. Had a few drops the other day. So another weapon or 2 would be really helpful for them. And really, Austin Eckler could be your slot receiver. I mean, get him on the field. We haven't seen McCaffrey take that next step. So you get your playmakers on the field when it comes playoff time.
Yeah, and speaking of a wide receiver who could be or a running back who could be a wide receiver, Tyrone Tracy has been unbelievable in his rookie season with great services. If there's one bright spot for the Giants fan base, it's only this guy, truly. Even Malik Neighbors is kind of disappearing.
What happened? What about Malik Neighbors? I mean,
no, but he's been Malik Neighbors. I don't know if we talked about early in the season, maybe after week 1 or 2, that he was going to start taking massive hits and it was going to start hurting. He hit that major concussion, and now he just hasn't seemed like the aggressive wide receiver we saw him in the first half of the season. He's dropping easy passes. He's not making these sideline catches that he was. And I think that he's like, I don't want to risk my body for Daniel Jones and this offense. So insert Tyrone Tracy. He's taking charge of this offense right now. And I do think they have a bright future with Tyrone Tracy and Malik Neighbors. They clearly need some new quarterback, some new offensive mind to help them take the next step. I do like Dable, but I think sometimes, a losing culture is hard to overcome.
Yeah, and maybe it'll be a switch from Daniel Jones. There's been rumblings and rumors all year that Drew Lock would take over. They're going into a bye, so I think it's the most likely time that he's going to take over. You might as well see what you've got in him, see if he makes sense, because Daniel Jones almost for sure will be a free agent after this year. They have a way out of the contract, so they'd be able to cut him as long as he stays healthy. Even more reason to bench him. He's got an injury guarantee. You don't want him getting hurt in the last couple weeks of the season, and now you're stuck with him for, I think it's something like $45 million next year.
Pretty stupid. For even back then.
It was one of those things at the time. There wasn't a lot out there, and so you structure it in a way you can get out of it. With the way quarterback salaries have blown up, I think if he had, stayed healthy and become more consistent, maybe it'd be a value. But we just keep seeing these running quarterbacks. It's really tough for them to evolve as passers because they get so stuck in just, I'm just going to scramble. I can just run away from this. And then they don't develop the accuracy and the pocket presence that they need to be an elite quarterback. It's really hard to be a Lamar Jackson where you sit in the pocket, and then bounce it. I mean, that's the thing that he does so well is he sits in the pocket for the 3 seconds and then says, all right, screw this. Let's make something happen. Or some of these other guys
actually makes reads and then goes. That's
And I mean, and having the arm to do it too, or the leg. I mean, too, it's like Daniel Jones has good legs, but they're not Lamar's, and nobody has Lamar's ability to run 30 yards backwards and then 40 yards forward to gain 3 yards. It's just wild stuff that he does sometimes back there. And what do you think? A week where defenses come through?
I know.
It's like
blowouts means
backs are starting to pop up, so that means it's time to get on those D's.
Yeah.
Take advantage. Philly D took full advantage of that sunshine.
Dude,
I don't know if that son's going to make you fumble, but 4 fumble recoveries for the Philly D, 1 pick. They easily could have had more.
Yeah. Do you think that they should have brought in Trey Lance earlier, but because of all the fumbles, they're like, well, it's not really Cooper Rush's fault. It's more that they can't hold on to the ball. I'm curious. I mean, it clearly is leading up to why don't you just see what you have in Trey Lance soon? But it was just curious that they couldn't get anything going, and they're like, let's just wait. Let's just wait.
Yeah, I really thought that they would have brought him in at least a little bit sooner. I mean, things had gone south. Things were not coming back. It was a bad game. There was really no shot at them coming back. So you'd want to see what you have in Trey Lance. I mean, you're kind of locked in with Dak, so he'd have to completely ball out to be a point where you're like, okay, let's pay him and keep him as the backup. And the salaries just don't work. I mean, I don't see how they could keep him really at any number. I mean, maybe if he's willing to take $1-2 million a year, they'd be able to take him. But that's third quarterback money, and why would he sign for that if he's a free agent? You know, so I could see that maybe he balls out and they could tag and trade him. I think that's kind of your best case scenario. But even that, I mean, most teams aren't going to want to pay him a tag number unless he just looks so good that they want him as a starter.
So you're saying he won't be able to pull a Brock Purdy that was pulled on him on Dak Prescott. What a hilarious moment that would be for Trey Lance if he then takes over the most highest paid quarterback in the league. Well, I agree. But to your point, Trey Lance didn't look amazing either. You know, obviously it's short yardage. These defense are eating up people. Buffalo, first of all, Joe Flacco, what worse blow up in your face plan than Joe Flacco starting over Anthony Richardson? Was like, hey, we're really looking for our offense to take another step. And they're just like, nope, sorry. The Joe Flacco is actually not good anymore, where he's actually 40 years old, and it's over. So it certainly is not an ideal situation. And if I'm the Colts front office, I think you got to start to swallow your pride, because those 2 games from Joe Flacco have not been it. And defenses obviously see how slow he is, and they just bring the pressure. He's not able to do what he once did. I don't think that offense is very good. And they're not really used. Jonathan Taylor's still so skilled, but I just don't see why you wouldn't just go back to Anthony Richardson at this point. Like, this is embarrassing for everyone to watch Joe Flacco. And if he continues to start, like, go find that defense that's starting against him, because he is going to get your defense a lot of points.
Yeah, my floor director pulled me off for a second there.
And luckily, I could hear
it. Not too much of an emergency, it's minor hiccups. But no, I mean, I don't get Flacco starting right now. It just makes no sense. I didn't really get it from the time they went to it. The numbers just aren't there. I mean, he's not Joe Burrow. He's not, maybe if this is the Browns team around him and you just got an elite defense like they did last year, or, maybe some receivers that are producing high end, the Colts they just don't have the right identity. I mean, if you built that team around an offensive line, a defensive line, and Jonathan Taylor, then sure, that might be a recipe to win. But you're trying to throw the ball all around the field. You don't have a good defense. You're susceptible to the pass and the run. I mean, 3rd best team in the division. Could be, it's one of those years. Why not play for a pick if you know a guy's not playing good?
Yeah, I think now we'll start seeing teams start tanking. So it'll be interesting fantasy-wise what teams will, a.k.a. the Giants. Do the Jets do that? We'll see. A lot of duds, as we were talking about. And I think if we were to keep a list of what we were writing throughout the show, it is almost all wide receivers. With no one on the board, no one scoring. Are you worried about CeeDee Lamb with no Dak Prescott? Do you think that he's now a wide receiver 2, or does he still have a threat of a wide receiver 1? Even if he catches that touchdown, he still doesn't hit his even projected marks, or he gets really close, and that's with the touchdown. So that's a little scary.
Yeah, on this list, we've got almost all wide receivers, 6 for 21, 2 for 14, 2 for 21, 5 for 48, 6 for 31, 5 for 41, and 4 for 34. I mean, yeah, that's going to happen time to time for some of these receivers, but you don't expect it to happen to so many in a week. And part of it is that huge blowout. I mean, CeeDee Lamb wasn't out there for the fourth quarter. If Dak was in that game, they're down by half as much points, and they're still pushing to try to get back. CeeDee's going to have 12 for 120 type of thing, trying to catch back up in that game. But instead, they're like, we got to just make sure he doesn't get hurt. You know, same thing for Devontae Smith, same game. He only has 2 for 14, but the game got so out of hand. He wasn't in the game. They weren't throwing. You know, Saquon wasn't even running. They had Shipley and Gainwell in there. So, I mean, it's really hard to see a backup quarterback come in and it help your team. I mean, there's only one Jameis. You know, they're not everywhere.
And Jameis is only 1 week so far.
and that's a roller coaster in itself. You know, Joe Flacco, he's better for those wide receivers numbers, but at the same time, he's not winning, so he's not going to be out there too long. You know, Mac Jones, I don't think that's going to work out well. And even Sam Darnold, you know, I think it's one of those things where we saw Sam Darnold, he's a high-end backup, you know, he could be a low-end starter, but at the same time, the reason we saw such good production is Justin Jefferson is the elite wide receiver. He's with an elite quarterback. He would be wide receiver 1. You know, there's almost not really a question about that. So when you see the backups come in, he can still produce, but he's not producing at 100% of what he could. And so now CeeDee Lamb is not necessarily the deep threat that some of these other guys are. And so, I mean, I think it just hurts him. He's going to get some volume, but he's definitely a wide receiver 2 now. I mean, there's just no ways about it. I mean, that's the difference between a wide receiver 1 and 2 is the wide receiver 1s put it up every week. You know, a bad week, they're still getting 50, 60, 70 yards receiving, whereas a wide receiver 2 is just, who knows? They can blow up and they have that ceiling, but they also, I mean, Devontae Smith is a true wide receiver 2 or 3 that just, you never know when you're going to get a dud performance.
Yeah, I think the players I'm worried about, I'm not worried about Justin Jefferson. Brian Thomas depends. Devontae Smith, you know, you're right. It's been like that for a while. I'm worried about CeeDee Lamb, Devontae Adams, and Garrett Wilson because of the situation more than anything on those teams. What happens next? What are we going to see? Are they going to start tanking? Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson have worked out for 1 week for both owners, you know, for owners who have both. I just can't imagine for those guys it's going to work out most weeks. It's already history tells us that it's going to not work out more than it's going to work out each week. And then if you take a step and they keep losing a couple more games, then what is the path forward for these guys, this team? What is their will to try to win these games if they're going to try and potentially tank when they have no future ahead? And the only way they may be able to do that is get a top pick in the NFL draft. It's going to be super interesting with the Dallas Cowboys. What are they even playing for at this point, right? So why start CeeDee Lamb all of these games at the end of the year or play him deep into the games just to win and have a respectable record? I just can't see it with those teams.
Well, and part of the disconnect is you have your GMs that are going to be looking to lose games and get a high draft pick. You have your head coaches that are going to be trying to win games and keep their job. So, you know, is this the end in Dallas?
Has to be, right? Although we said that last year, so
right. So I mean, I think they have to kind of keep pushing forward until Mike McCarthy's fired. If he gets fired, then it's kind of all lame duck from there. You know, it's just kind of. But you know, you see a little bit of rejuvenation when the backup coach gets in. You know, guys want to play for him, kind of thing. And for the Jets, I think they have to push forward. I mean, as bad a games as they all had, you have to look at it. This is we're still in the first year of Aaron Rodgers coming back from the Achilles injury. We're in the first month of him having Devontae Adams back with him, and first time they're playing together on the Jets. You have an offensive system that's still he's not even a full season into with the Jets. You know, it's a guy that he's worked with before, but it's just not the same when you're on a new team. So I think they have to build for next year and trying to figure this offense out, because their offense is what's letting them down. And I think the bigger problem is they were expecting to have an elite defense, and the defense has been very average.
Yeah, and that's part of why Saleh was let go. Look, Jets have favorable matchups the next 4 weeks for their offense. Colts, Seahawks, Dolphins, Jaguars. If they can't get it done there, it's going to be a lot of soul searching for them. All right, we got a few minutes left, it sounds like, from our producers. All right, I got it. I got you guys. Real quick, who are you trying to pick up when we get off this? Get off the set.
Marquez Valdes-Scantling coming back to life again.
Wow.
He's like a zombie wide receiver.
Yes.
He just got. I can't even remember where he got cut from this last week. Was it Kansas City? Was
it's like
it
Sterling Shepard. I'm like, how the hell is he getting? How is Sterling Shepard getting end arounds at 31 years old on the team he just joined?
And I think it's just impressive he's still able to play wide receiver at 31.
Crazy.
With how much tear. But Valdes-Scantling is pretty much the last wide receiver standing in New Orleans at this point. I mean, they don't have anybody else. They've got very little to play for, so they're going to run out whoever they can and chuck it deep, see what happens. So he's got that long ball capability. Audric Estime kind of taking over that Denver backfield. We saw Javonte Williams with only 1 carry on the day. Estime had, I think, 15 or so.
Yeah.
So didn't ball out with it, but it looks like it's going to be his backfield going forward. So he's a guy to look at. And then Cam Akers, the new number 2 in Minnesota. Aaron Jones, a little banged up. I think they have a bye, so we'll see how much value he has, but I think he's the handcuff to Aaron Jones for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and he took a big hit at the end of the game, and Aaron Jones has been pretty fragile in the past, so never hurts. And Cam Akers actually produced this season so far. For me, Odell Beckham, hold on to him for this week, especially if you're Tyreek Hill owners. Tyreek Hill seems to be a game-time decision. It's a wrist injury that's been bothering him all season. So who knows, even if he goes, it could be something he re-aggravates. Odell Beckham came back, I think, a week or 2 ago. So we'll see how he fits into this. Trey Benson looked really solid for the first time this season. I think if you can go out in Dynasty, wait for like when James Conner takes over another game, he looks pretty solid. I do like him in the Dynasty. And then Jaylen Warren, his usage is going up. Russell Wilson's, likes those running backs, likes, dumping it down to them. So if you kind of sneak in and get him, he didn't have numbers popping off the page, but at the end of last year, he was awesome. And I can see Russell Wilson using him as well. So maybe go out and get him right before, if you're a redraft league, right before the trade deadline.
Yeah, and Benson you might have to pay for, but he's going to cost a lot more next year when he's the stud starting running back.
Exactly.
He's just kind of sneaking on. Some guys might have too many young running backs, be willing to let him go for what they paid for him, a second rounder or something like that. So,
yeah,
good value there, and they're finally letting us free.
All right, time to take a nap. What are you about to do? I feel like I've been here forever.
I mean, should be a good night game between the Lions and Texans, but a nap sounds a lot better. I think I'm gonna go for some of that.
Yeah, look, I'm sure it'll be boring, and who knows what will happen, but we'll see. Also, you should start drinking water. I saw you drink like 20 Red Bulls during this whole show, so I'm a little worried about you, bud.
Oh, I gotta hit the bathroom. Gotta let it flow.
It's gonna smell like straight Red Bull. All right, I'll see you soon.